Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Nvidia stock going to finally rebound? What's going on with the Trump tariffs and how's that going to impact things like TSMC and their chips outside of Taiwan? What's going on with OpenAI? They're getting in bed with government. There's so many topics and stories. Every Wednesday we come back, we talk about all the top news stories that we think are interesting on the show. So this is the Daily AI Show. Today is January 29th, 2025. You made it, you're here. With me today, we have Beth, Jyunmi, Andy, and I'm Brian. And like I said, today is all about getting into these news stories. Deep was on my brain because the story that has been dominating, I would say, the last few days has been everything in and around DeepSeek. Now, DeepSeek actually came out, I think, on Christmas Day is when their first model. And then there was the R1 reasoning model. And just recently, they came out with their Janus Pro 7B model, which also is producing images. But it's bigger than just, oh, this model dropped, right? It's about where did it come from? What are the user guidelines? What are the security protocols to it? What do we need to be worried about? Did they actually train it for the price they said? Do they have as many chips as they were saying they had? Because that's an issue as well. So it's been this weird unfolding story over the last couple of days, but there's no denying it. It wiped what, 600 billion or something crazy like that. I might have that number. That might be too high off the stock market and really, created a dip, especially for Nvidia. Now, Nvidia today
it was $600 billion lost.
600 billion, right? Yeah, Nvidia has rebounded some of that. I just want to give people just a gist of, I show the high in the last month to be $149. They dropped as low as 118 back on the 27th, so 2 days ago when all this came out. And as of right now, they're at 125. So they are rebounding off of that. Whether they'll get back closer to their highs around 147, which they were on January 23rd, they were at 147. Of course, Nvidia is not the only stock to be impacted here, obviously, as Andy's saying. So there's just a lot going on. We don't want to take the whole show to talk about R1, but guys, we have to talk about it a little bit, right? Because it's been a major story. I personally have noticed how much this made it into just general conversations outside of my AI bubble on LinkedIn. Because I talked about it. And of course, I expect people like Nicole Leffler. I expect, people like you guys or Karl to talk about it. Ethan Malik talk about it. Sure. But I was seeing people post about this who I don't normally see post about AI. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? But it made it into the general sphere. It made it past my bubble. I'll say that much.
Same. Totally made it past the bubble. I was talking to a friend, like just catching up, friend from college, who we don't talk about AI. Like that has not been a conversation.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Right.
We don't talk about AI.
I mean, we talk about how does your body feel now, right? Like that's what we talk about. But she said, "Hey, what's your opinion on DeepSeek?" And I was like, "Hey, I have one. Why do you?"
Yeah, exactly.
Why? What is happening that you're asking me about DeepSeek?
Yes. Slowly back out of the room. What is going on? What is happening right now?
I need some context.
The firestorm of press attention to this, coupled with the enormous economic impact to the U.S. stock market and all AI stocks, is expressly because the advances that this small team of people over in China, using purely China resources, it's not a mix, was so incredible. It had to be validated, in tweets by people like Sam Altman saying, yeah, this is an impressive accomplishment. And why is it really getting so much press attention? Well, DeepSeek has offered their mobile app for free on the app stores, both on iPhone and on, the Android app store, Google Play. And it is now the top downloaded thing in 52 countries. So it's past ChatGPT. Well, of course, that could be like a blurb, right? It's happening right at the moment. But a lot of people around the world, hundreds of millions of people, are downloading that app and using it and finding it to be superior in some ways. And I will mention some of those examples in a minute, but let me say why this is concerning. this is another example of a Chinese company like TikTok getting access to an enormous amount of US data, because people using an AI end up talking to the AI about everything, what they like, what they do, what they plan, and all of that is being used then to be incorporated back into DeepSeek's servers in China. Now, companies have to worry about, how do we keep our proprietary data safe when many of our employees, we talked about this yesterday in terms of shadow AI, are downloading DeepSeek, and now all that information is going to China's servers, right? And DeepSeek is, like every Chinese company, it is inextricably linked with the Communist Party of China. So corporations you're not going to be able to stop employees from downloading DeepSeek just to try it out and see whether it's particularly useful, especially with so many prominent influencers in AI saying, yeah, I tried DeepSeek and it worked better. I listened to one thing yesterday where a woman reported, not a woman who is a typical influencer, but comments on a wide range of things. Her name is Becca. I forget. Maybe you guys know the woman. Becca Day, I think, is the name. Anyway, she said she was working on a project and she had asked ChatGPT to summarize the stuff and give her citations in this legal document, about where the reference was and which item in the legal document. And when ChatGPT did it, it came back with what seemed to be a really solid response. But when she checked them, they were almost all incorrect. They didn't translate the import of the phrasing in the legal document correctly. She then did it on DeepSeek, not for the purposes of doing a comparison, but just because DeepSeek, she'd heard about it, and so she's decided to try it. And it did the same job in 45 seconds and had precise alignment between what was actually in the legal document and what the summary was on DeepSeek. Very different from ChatGPT. So, and it could be that, I don't have all the details. Maybe she used ChatGPT, a 3.5 turbo. I don't know, but I would have expected ChatGPT to be able to do that kind of factual alignment much, much better. So there are some real advances that have happened as a result of DeepSeek, and it was done very inexpensively. And I have a list of reasons why, like what the sort of algorithmic advances were that allowed DeepSeek to accomplish this training at a much lower budget. And I will talk about that, but I just wanted to start out by saying this is a problem for most of the AI models that are out there, because DeepSeek is arguably as good or better than the best frontier models with reasoning capabilities. And it was done very inexpensively, and it's being put out there free by the Chinese.
We did a show on like a phrase, and I can't come up with a phrase, but it's like something like the procrastination quotient. Like there's an advantage, right, to not being the frontier.
The weight equation,
the weight equation, not the procrastination. Yeah. I just wish that it was called that. This is an example of that, right? If you wait, then the technology advances. You can leap the people who were investing in the very beginning for less. Wow.
And well, I was just going to say real quick that Sam Altman took a dig at that, by the way, on X. And it was, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but it was basically like, it's much harder to be the leader and do something new and innovative that's never been done before than to simply come behind and parrot what somebody else has done. And listen, DeepSeek ain't the first, but when I really started to listen to what people were saying about it or whatever, I honestly am not that impressed. I'm just not that impressed. I don't know. I've had other people on LinkedIn agree with me, but other people haven't. I'm like, oh, okay. So they had a whole lot of H100 servers. They spent way more money than they admitted. There's apparently a sister company that's not associated, that's not DeepSeek, but spent the money first for all the things they had to do. You keep hearing these stories, and then, of course, the privacy, which you just talked about, and how big of a deal that is. Because ooh, we got problems with TikTok, but DeepSeek can swing in with an app within a day and take all your data, to the point where you would have to think, if you came up with a novel business idea using R1 on DeepSeek, you may not own that idea. You may not own the idea. The Chinese might own that idea and they could run with it. Like,
yeah, I want to highlight that privacy, at data privacy point a little bit. There is a difference. So for clarity, there is a difference from using DeepSeek, the app, and loading DeepSeek, the open source version, locally on your computer. Okay. Big differences between those. Locally,
absolutely,
you have control of the model because it's on your computer. Nothing goes out that you don't send out, right? The app, if you look at the terms and conditions, that's where a lot of red flags come out. They specifically mention things like key logging. So any key you hit while in the app, any information that goes in or out, they have, in some cases, ambiguous rights over, and in some cases, just broad rights over. So that's definitely something to consider.
and
Now,
what if the app is in the background, Jimmy? Right? What if the app is running in the background?
Exactly.
Is it also taking my other keystrokes?
That's a problem because that's not clarified. We don't know how far it's interacted. Now, I would like to hope that there is clear memory siloing between apps in iPhones and the Apple ecosystem, but I just need more clarity on that, and DeepSeek isn't providing that kind of specificity. But I did want to highlight that major issue and the difference between the two, because in a lot of the open source arenas, that's where a lot of the hype and buzz and those ratings and everything like that is coming from, is because people are loading it onto their local machines. I was just seeing some various sources where people are loading the 32-bit or 32 billion parameter version on their local machines, just using a modern laptop. Right,
yeah, like
a modern
Pros,
like
right?
M4 or something like that, and it was running fairly quickly. If you have patience for longer processing times, that means you could probably run it on even older equipment. So there's going to be a lot of those kinds of stories coming out there, and that goes to speaking to a lot of what Andy was saying in terms of, it's lightweight, didn't take even with things like how much money they spent and how much access to GPUs may be skewed from what they're announcing. It's still significantly less. Even with those, it's still signitigantly less than what is being speculated as.
I want to jump in here, and I just want to mention that Jan LeCun actually had a really good post on this yesterday, talking about, I think everyone kind of started jumping on, it's super low, it's inexpensive against the other models. We're like, well, you have to still understand the difference between training costs and inference costs, right? Everyone's like, oh, you don't need 500 billion. I'm like, well, yeah, you kind of still need huge computes, because there's the training part of it, but then there's the inference where you actually have to start using it in the real world, recognizing images, recognizing video, audio, and then doing the cost, all the things that related to that. So I would imagine if you take the 300 million people who are using ChatGPT, move it over to DeepSeek, can they handle from a compute side that on inference alone? I don't think they can, because that's where a lot of the costs are. So there's a training part. And so it's such a simplistic say, oh yeah, it's cost 6 million to train. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But like, you now still need to, all the stuff that's running on it, you have to be accommodating for all those things that are happening. So what we have, ChatGPT advanced voice mode, you have vision, you have canvas project, all those things that are required, and then they're bringing O3 to pretty much free ChatGPT, then that's even more compute that people will need. So that's the first thing I want to mention. The second thing is, there is no way I can even remotely recommend this to any of my clients. None. Because the moment I say, where is this from? Chat, no, done, right?
Yeah.
Any business and nothing. It's nothing. Like, even if I say, yeah, you can run it locally, which will glaze everyone's eyes in the room, then it'll be like Llama, Grok, Perplexity, glaze everyone's eyes in the room. Oh, because I love how people say, oh, it's so easy. You could just download a Llama and put this on. Like, how many people do you know would actually understand what I just said? And you can do that, and I'll give you instruction. Well, they won't even do it. Like,
And
well,
case in point on this, Karl, that they, back to what Jyunmi was saying, two companies that I've seen right off the bat capitalize on exactly what you're saying, Hugging Face and Hyperbolic. I got emails from Hyperbolic saying, hey, guess what? All you have to do is rent the model or the servers that you need. That's what Hyperbolic does for fairly cheap costs. You can rent that and you can run DeepSeek as much as you want, and it'll never go outside back to your point, Jimmy. Hugging Face also just came out and they made news. In fact, it's one of my news stories for today. Welcome to Inference providers on the hub. So today we are launching the integration of 4 awesome serverless inference providers: Fall, Replicate, Sambanova, and Together AI. It goes on and on. And it says, here's what this enables. Taking the timely example of DeepSeek AI, DeepSeek R1, a model which has achieved mainstream fame over the last few days. We're excited to be partnering with Hugging Face to accelerate the Inference API. Okay, so it goes into it more, but what I basically read was that Hugging Face is going to make DeepSeek available with some changes to it. The impression I got from it, I'd have to go validate this, is that it's on US servers and it should take care of some of the problems. Because back to your point, Andy, it is open. It's an open model, and so it can be used and moved around. And I'm glad you made the distinction, Jimmy, that the app that they delivered and using DeepSeek there is certainly not the same thing as using it on your own servers in a controlled environment. But to your point, Karl, who are we working with? I mean, that's enterprise level anyway, most likely. And who are we working with that's really doing that? Or even knows that they have a use case for it?
Well, even enterprise level, right? I was in a meeting with like a pretty big enterprise company yesterday, and all of them heard about DeepSeek, but then when we started talking about it, the CEO was like, "Hell no, we're not even touching that in our system." And when you just said Hugging Face, I guarantee if I say Hugging Face in the room, I would say nearly everyone will be like, "What the hell's Hugging Face?"
Yeah,
right. That is the audience.
I mean, that was me.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit 2 years ago, whatever. I had no idea what it was.
I think from a personal use, like, I think it's important that people know it's like, hey, if you use ChatGPT normal, like without doing any toggles privacy, yeah, they will train on your data. But if you use DeepSeek, yeah, you have to know that they will train on your data. But the Chinese will train on your data. Some people don't care, but some people be like, wait a minute, what is that? Like, that's the questions. And I also think too, it's like, there's a bunch of news stories this morning talking about how like they literally, I don't know if it's substantiated or not. It's like Microsoft and OpenAI are investigating if DeepSeek was actually violation of their services by training. I forgot the term they were using, that a bigger model would train a smaller model. They would take the training data from that, which is in violation, obviously, of OpenAI's policies. But I was like, that's kind of that's where we're coming with right now, and all this information. So I know when all this stuff came out, everyone's so hyped up, but I'm like, hold on a second. Some of this stuff doesn't make any sense. Let's just wait a little bit longer until the actual investigative reporting and then people actually start digging. It's like, oh, okay, now we're starting to hear a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And not that I'm saying don't use DeepSeek. I think if you have use cases that you can use it on premise and actually do it, I think that's an awesome amount, because no matter what people say, it's still a tenth or eventually it'd be a quarter of what the tokens are. So if you have the use case, it's a pretty good opportunity to build on top of it. But for a lot of companies, that's not. The moment I mention what is DeepSeek and I explain it, no matter if it's open source, no matter what it is, it'd be like, no, we're not even touching that. Like, no IT division would be like, yeah, that's a good idea. Like, nah. It's not wait.
Well,
Not,
let me just jump quickly into, and before we move on to other topics, let me just jump into what the contribution of DeepSeek has been to the progression of AI, because they have made a significant contribution here, and they've done so by innovating around constraints that we imposed on them in terms of compute concentration and scaling large models. Rather, they had to do something quite different. And what they did, again, to repeat, is their DeepSeek R1 reasoning model surpasses OpenAI's O1 model, not the O3 model that's about to come, but the O1 model that's available now, while being trained on less powerful hardware and at a fraction of the cost. But the innovation was really around the whole cycle of pre-training. And I'm going to gratify Cisco's earlier comment here by saying this is like an evolution of models, and they built on the backs of giants and used an evolutionary merging process and a recursive process to achieve the significant capabilities in reasoning. And let me just kind of run through, without deep explanation, what the four training phases were in this process. So the first one is called cold start fine tuning. And what that did was it took a small data set of high quality chain of thought examples, and they used that for initial fine tuning of the reasoning capabilities of the model. And that data set was curated from output from the predecessor model that they had built, which was DeepSeek R10. Okay. And so then they did, and this is the key innovation that they did, is they used pure reinforcement learning, which is different from reinforcement learning from human feedback. It's not supervised reinforcement. It's mathematical reinforcement built in there. And pure RL was applied to enhance its reasoning capabilities without relying on large-scale supervised data sets. So it could do this sort of check its own reasoning, in effect. And there's a specific type, and I'm not a technical guy, so generalized policy optimization was the RL framework that they used. So GRPO, RL framework, that was the key thing that enabled this model to self-evolve. And this was what Cisco was referring to in terms of evolutionary model merge, where one model can be used and merged with another one. In this case, internally, in their sort of self-enhanced development, the model self-evolved through thousands of steps. And this calls on, some of the comments we've made about robots and their ability to do this kind of internal recursive thinking that allows them to practice and arrive at a final solution through millions of iterations. And this is one of the key things that the DeepSeek team used in order to train their model to reason. The third is rejection sampling and data synthesis. Rejection sampling, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it filters outputs for correctness and readability. And they were combined with supervised data from DeepSeek v3 in domains like factual QA. And this is why I think that woman who did the comparison between ChatGPT and DeepSeek got much better factual responses to questions through DeepSeek, because it had been trained on that kind of thing to be very precise and factual and provide factual basis from the data. Okay. That's not brand new stuff, but it was a part of this pipeline that they used. And the final RL phase incorporated used diverse tasks and rule-based rewards for specific domains like math, and importantly, leveraged LLM feedback for broader alignment with human preferences. So one of their earlier models, DeepSeek v3, that LLM is now, giving commentary and providing additional reinforcement learning to the model. And all of that combined delivered this very, very powerful R1 model. And there was really a final step, which it may be is behind what the availability and compute, inference cost reduction is, which is they distilled that R1 model into smaller models using the Quinn and Llama 3 series, which are open source models out there, Quinn from China, Llama from Meta. Those models are now possessed of R1's reasoning capabilities by a distillation process. So those are more efficient. You can deliver the apps reasoning capabilities using those more efficient models. You may not, in fact, when you're using DeepSeek's mobile app, you may not be working directly with R1. You're working with a distillation of R1 that is capable of doing all of those things.
I just want to add, in terms of distillation, that was the word that came up. David Sachs came up, talked about it. Bloomberg talked about it. Financial Times talked about it. Because in addition to the distillation process from Quinn and Llama, they're looking at the distillation from OpenAI directly, that is the big piece that some people are like, hey, wait a minute, not that it's I was like, if everyone here knows about Silicon Valley, the show, if everyone saw New Pied Piper, I was waiting for the meme New OpenAI with Jin Yang in the back, like I don't know if anyone gets what that was, like the whiteboard. So it's like New Pied Piper, and who wipes it out to be New OpenAI. He wipes that out. And that is, to me, the funniest thing, because it's like, well, what did you expect? That was like, it's inevitable that this would happen. And it did force, like, I think Sam Altman said, hey, congratulations, but we are going to build better models and we're going to pull up our releases. So I was like, okay, it's on. So
and not a release, but one of the news stories for this week for sure is introducing ChatGPT Gov. Now, you can't tell me that's not, maybe they pulled that up, maybe they were going to announce it anyway, but that's a really strategic, smart move. We see this cat and mouse game all the time with Google, and one releases, and that you can tell, you almost get the feeling that they're holding and they're hanging on to a release to one up the last, so they get the news cycle back on them. But introducing ChatGPT Gov, this is really interesting. And what this is basically saying is ChatGPT is going, or OpenAI is saying, hey, we're secure enough that the government now uses us. We're good enough for the US government. And I don't want to underplay how important that is, that they come out with something like that during this news cycle of DeepSeek. It's very, very important. And they're saying here, like, how government agencies use ChatGPT today. Since 2024, more than 90,000 users across more than 3,500 U.S. federal, state, and local government agencies has sent over 18 million messages to ChatGPT to support their day-to-day working. They talk about how it's used in Air Force Research Laboratories, Los Alamos National Laboratory, State of Minnesota's Enterprise Translation Office, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is using it, so on and so forth. So we don't have to stay on this too long, but basically, I just think it's important, and it's important for OpenAI to put this out now. While they're going, and we're seeing all the news cycles, and DeepSeek is taking up some of that, and the Chinese models are getting ahead. OpenAI raising their hand and going, yes, but the U.S. government trusts us. It's a big statement. Okay, I know I've talked about one or two different news stories. Let's move on, unless they're tangential to it. But I know I have a bunch more open, tabs on my screen, but I'll get back to those. Let's get some other news stories that you guys sort of picked up over the last week that you thought were interesting. Yeah. So who wants to jump in with a few?
I'll jump in. I've got a science story that is maybe thematically on what we've been talking about so far, but apparently out of Brussels, there's been a new study coming out of one of their university's AI labs, where it's coming out of their computational linguistics, is a study of how they wanted to develop a method of training new AI more in line with how a human child learns, right? So we've talked about current LLMs are prediction models, right? They try and predict what's the next most likely bit of text that's predicted to be next. Now, by trying to align it more on how human children learn language by taking in interactions with the environment and various variations on that, they get a more holistic view of how a language works, right? And they can experiment and do a lot of some of the similar things that DeepSeek is touted for their evolution in their model, being able to that's where this guesses comes in, essentially, right? Until they figure out this is the right piece of information that I should be doing. This is the right context. This is the right engagement with the environment, things like that. And this is all supposed to make hallucination and biases. They'll be less prone to that because their comprehension in the language, right? These new AI their comprehension would be grounded in that direct interaction. It would use, because of that method, it would use data and energy more efficiently. So there'd be less, impact on those infrastructures. And the language understanding would be more rooted in meaning and intention as opposed to just trying to predict what the next character is, the next text is, or even what the next sentence is. So this study sort of goes along the lines that we're seeing. This is where this, early on, we talked about the evolutionary model merge, and now we're seeing from DeepSeek reasoning their process of figuring out by grabbing or accessing the necessary pieces of information. So if we can add in this additional context, and there might be even something like from Google's Titan and stuff like that, aspects of that, but cohesively these may all work towards having a base meaning and intention and understanding, as opposed to just predicting or guessing. So I thought that story was that's interesting, and that came out yesterday. So
yeah, it is interesting. Who else? Maybe.
Yeah. Yep. So Figure AI announced creating the Center for the Advancement of Humanoid Safety. The idea behind this is to create a set of common tests and frameworks that would indicate the levels of safety, right? So we have that for like AGI models, right? We have that in that context, but we don't have it for embodied AI or robots, right? And Figure AI is kind of a leader in that, sort of, right? They're very good at promoting themselves, and the people behind it are very successful in have been very successful in other venues. So this is interesting, I think, because again, talking about the people who are outside of the tech bubble. I flew yesterday and had a conversation with a seatmate, and the conversation that I keep getting from people outside the tech bubble who are not looking to hire someone for AI, but just have that conversation, is why shouldn't we be freaked out? Right? Like, what is happening? How do we avoid Terminator? How do we avoid like the pop culture kinds of things? And I feel like this is the first time I've seen some industry answer, kind of. I don't know that this is the answer, but I do think it's an important piece of having that conversation, so that people have more context for asking those questions, and we have more like across the board, the way that we do with language models, right? Like everybody scored these are the scores on this benchmark, right? We need that for this next level as well, I think. So that was my I think it's good. I don't know that it will be the top one, but it is the first one that I'm aware of that is trying to do this.
Yeah. I have a few, but they're quick. I think Reid Hoffman He's a co-founder of LinkedIn, but a lot of people just know Reid Hoffman in general. Launches Manus AI with a 24 million investment round for AI drug discovery. I mean, I know you talk about a lot of the health side of it, Jyunmi. I always like seeing these stories too, but just more AI being used for more good. Aggressive cancer research is where they're going to put their initial focus. This is somebody who's had reasonable success and has, a little bit of respect as far as his name goes, and starting up companies, obviously LinkedIn and what they did before they sold to Microsoft. So be interesting to see what that's about. Pika, who we haven't talked about Pika in quite a while. Pika 2.1 is here. Crystal clear 1080p resolution, razor sharp details, seamless motion, lifelike human characters, and more. If you see it, you'll believe it. Well, I am seeing it on my on the Twitter feed that this came from, and yeah, it's like it's right there with some of these other video production models now that are just producing amazingly very realistic videos that at this point, I don't know that I can tell the difference. I'm not good enough to see that the light bent off that glass at a different refraction rate. I'm not that good. So most of it at a quick glance at 1080p for a 10-second video is going to be there. Now, I will say Google's Video FX and I have like alpha access to that. Still, to me, with panning and zooming and what they do, lifelike, to me is still the front runner. But Pika's out there, and the curated ones that they have on this little sizzle reel look great. Whether they can do that consistently or not, I don't know. 2 from OpenAI. 1 Sam posted. Okay, here we heard y'all. Plus tier will get 100 O3 mini queries per day. So that's the plus tier, not the pro tier. That's the $20 tier or $25 tier. So that's impressive. O3, I think O3 mini, based on everything I've seen from Kevin Whale and when he was over in Davos and stuff, he was doing an interview with somebody from the Wall Street Journal. I think it's days. I don't even think it's months at this point. I think O3 will come out in days, and we'll see if it gets pushed up because of all the DeepSeek stuff. He also said we will bring Operator to plus tier as soon as we can, whatever that means. Our next agent will launch with availability in the plus tier. So for anybody that was worried that now everything would come out in the pro tier, hey, what about us little guys in the middle? We used to be at the top. We were above free. We were around teams, but we weren't enterprise. But then you came out with this pro get everything now, and then it trickles down. And he's obviously hearing that people are talking about that and reassuring us at the pro level, at the plus level, the $25 range or whatever, that no, we will actually still get access to the launch of the next agent, which will be interesting. Now, OpenAI posted, not from Sam's account, but from OpenAI's account, Canvas update. Today, we're rolling out a few highly requested updates to Canvas and ChatGPT. If you know me, you know I love Canvas. I think it's one of the better ChatGPT improvements over the last several months. I love tasks too, but Canvas is bigger to me. Projects is great too. Canvas is still bigger. So it says Canvas now works with OpenAI O1. Select O1 from the model picker and use the toolbox icon or /Canvas command. And then also Canvas can render HTML and React code. I know what HTML is. I don't know what React code is. I tried it. I tried to deploy it really quickly. And then basically I ran the code and I told it render this HTML code, since that's the words they used in this post. And it did. And I was able to preview it and actually see the HTML right there in Canvas without actually using ChatGPT. So those are just some quick updates from the more different things going on with OpenAI. And of course, we already talked about government. Lisa said in our comments earlier a while back, she said, no one cares that ChatGPT is being used by the US government. I could not disagree more. I think a lot of people care a lot about that, especially businesses who are worried about privacy, data security, and stuff like that. They're going to, I think, seek comfort in that, that the OpenAI is now being used by the US government. So that's just my opinion on that, but obviously dissenting opinions in the comments as well. Okay, those are a couple quick ones for me. What else do you guys have?
I have a fun one here. This is not, this was released a little bit earlier, but it's about a company called Evolutionary Scale that's working on protein development and using a modeling of evolutionary development, but also filling in gaps where evolution doesn't take the right direction when they have a target objective. and they just developed a model for a glowing molecule. This kind of replicates the capabilities of corals and jellyfish and so on to deliver bioluminescence. But this is at the molecular level, and they say that this new glowing molecule created by the AI would have taken 500 million years of evolution in nature, if nature would ever have arrived at such a bioluminescence out of selective, what's the word for that? Selective, advancement of the survival of the fittest kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I want to touch on a couple of other things that are kind of related to the DeepSeek discussion, and they have to do with another Chinese company, which is Alibaba. Mm-hmm. Now, Alibaba's Quinn models are, well known in the AI marketplace, and they just released new Quinn models that can control PCs and phones. But also just today, they announced the release of Quinn 2.5. Let's see what the designation is. 2.5 Max outperforms DeepSeek and GPT 01. And this is just so, January 29th release. And it's interesting timing, right? Because Alibaba doesn't want to be left in DeepSeek's dust. So now they're releasing a model that they say actually surpasses the accomplishments of R1.
Right. There's a comment. I think it was Jude. If I got it wrong, I'm terribly sorry. But welcome to the age of Leapfrog, right? Mm-hmm. Leapfrog releases. Hey, I can jump over that. Sure. Here we go. I'll release my next thing.
And I think it also shows, right, Beth, that like when we've seen this, when we see models come out that like nobody's heard of anything, O1 comes out, and then almost immediately it seems like almost in parallel sometimes. Oh, we have something like that. We have a reasoning model. We have, like deep thinking, it's not the word I wanted for it, but geez, it went out of my head. But anyway, the reasoning and thinking models on there, chain of thought is what I was trying to come up with. Those models, and all of a sudden there's like, it's obvious that these things are being built in other places concurrently, So I think it's always a good reminder too, as we see this, that like, it's not just OpenAI. It's not just Anthropic. It's not Google. I mean, these are the companies we do talk about a lot, but, Grok obviously is making huge plays here. And then you have all the other models as well. There was a news story, actually. It was not about Mistral. It was about another French-backed AI model. And I saw that today. It was called Lucy or something like that. It had an easy name. And then it told you the square root of a pigeon was 1. And they had to pull that down. So that model is not currently being used by whoever it was in France. It wasn't doing so well. So it wasn't Mistral though.
But it was backed by Macron, and it was supposed to be like this is the one that the French government can use. I also saw that story. It said cow's eggs are considered to be a healthy and nourishing food source. And Herod the Great, the Judean king, played an important role in the development of the atomic bomb, right? So like those sorts of things. And again, we're back at that. We're back at the place where Gemini was put through its paces, but people didn't ask this level of question, which is why then you got images of things that clearly were very, very wrong.
Right.
Sure. And this kind of thing is seems very clear. They did not ask, about the Herod the Great and the role that they had with the atomic bomb. Right.
And this points out, right, Beth, that they're predicting the next word. You always say that. You always remind us that these are how the models are built. And, somewhere in there, it must just have too much creativity built in. I don't think it's that these people couldn't build a language model, but this is what happens, right? It comes out there, and then you find people who stress tested, or Karl was saying the other day, like when he got Operator, his first thought, and I agree with him, that's why I laugh at it. His first thought was, how can I break this? Right. And I think that's a great mind to have. I love that mind. My first thought on any AI model is, how can I break this? And we're not alone. There's millions of people who have the same thought. So, sometimes you have to release these things out there for them to get super stress tests. Because in 24, 48 hours, you're going to find out a lot about whether it's ready for public deployment or not. And maybe, I don't know the whole story, but could have maybe possibly saved some egg on the face for Macron if that had been done not so publicly or whatever. Because I don't think people generally like to go stress test things. They like to be part of that first wave of crowd of, hey, I'm getting to use something new and innovative. I don't know that you need to announce that as, backed by the French government until those things have happened. So anyway, and speaking of Google, by the way, I feel like I'm the only one talking about this. So I'm just going to say it really quick because it is news, but I've mentioned it on the show before, so I'll be quick about it. Google's thinking experimental model is free to use right now in the AI studio. Anybody can go use it, and it's ridiculously good. Now, I have no problem with O1. I have not played with R1. I've only seen what people have talked about it or whatever. So I'm not going to compare and contrast. I'm just going to tell you, if you're looking to see what new, different, not O1 reasoning models can do, you need to go to the aistudio.google.com, sign in with your Google, go to it, and you want the model that's called the Gemini. It's from a drop-down list under models. Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking Experimental 01-21. It's got a nice long name on it, but it tells you the data came out. It's $0. Zero doesn't input or outputs of $0. And if you want to have some fun with it, go use that for like interesting questions, and then just open up the thinking and see how it walks through the way people like R1 and how it feels very human. They say people say that a lot about Claude as well. Like, I just like the way it responds back to me. I don't know that it's exactly the same, but it just goes through and really breaks down what you asked for. So if you want to see how models are thinking about the questions you're writing in your prompts and get better at prompting, I would suggest going to use a model like this. And why wouldn't you? It's currently free. So that is sort of a bit of news because it just came out not long ago. Sorry, Beth, go ahead.
Andy is not. Andy, are you muted on your local mic? Sorry, I cannot hear you. What I'm going to say is the free model, free means it trains on your data. Just assume that, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's why you might not go and ask really in-depth questions that are related to your super science, totally incredible idea. Because that is the exchange. But I agree with you, Brian. And maybe we should do a show on that, because as you were saying, just go, right, and pull the drop down and that kind of stuff. That might be a little too much. That might also watch eyes glaze over. But it really is very, very good, very successful, very demure. I don't know. But
hey, you could also change the temperature too. Guess what you can't do with an O1 model? You can't change the temperature. You can also change your output tokens, your top P on there. If you've been in the OpenAI playground, you know what I'm talking about with this.
You've just glazed over people's eyes.
That's okay. For anybody that doesn't know, temperature is the level of creativity that it has. And that is a huge toggle for anybody who wants to fine tune the type of answers they're getting back. You have this amazing thinking experimental model, and not only can you get answers, but you can say, hey, you know what? I want you to have a little less creativity because this is more of a scientific thing. So I don't want you to be creative. I want you to play the role of a scientific method, and I want really concise, clear responses to this. And by the way, I want this for every subsequent follow-up question I might ask in there. So anyway, I think I'm beyond impressed too, but every time I bring it up somewhere, people are like, yeah. So I agree with you, Beth. We need to be doing a new show about the Gemini models that are out there, because we just had in the comments, a couple of minutes ago, talking about one that was trained for education. Justin said, anyone who tried Google's Learn LM 1.5 Pro focused on education, trained to support teachers in learning through targeted adaptive interactions. Is it any good? Anyone know it existed? I think, Justin, you kind of just put my point out there. We all had a good laugh in 2024 at Google and barred the Gemini and all the early days of it. And they would put out splash flash videos and they sucked when people really used them. That ain't Google. That ain't Gemini today. They're there with all the other top frontier models. So I think we should definitely do a show about where is Gemini today and what can you do with it. Okay, I'm off my soapbox on that one. But come on, guys, it's a free use.
No, totally. I agree. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I've been on the back end Gemini train for a while. I think AI Studio is like for the exchange of being able to that they want to train on my data, and the data that I'm using is public because it's our show, right? Like fine exchange, happy for it. What I find frustrating, we'll talk about on the show when we do it. I'm not even gonna go there. Hey.
Yeah. And listen, all I was going to say, Beth, is if people want this is serious. If people just want a really easy way, if they're like, I don't really know what I would ask about, here's what you can do. Most people know that you can go to YouTube, go to any one of our shows that we've produced, not the live, but go to the produced version of our show on YouTube that we put up every single day. Like later on today, the show will go up, right? Not a news show, but you could. I would take any other topic. Like yesterday, we talked about shadow AI. Take the transcript from the YouTube. There's plenty of different ways to do that. I use GLASP. Other people use whatever. Take that transcript and put it into the Gemini experimental thinking model. Or if you sign up for our newsletter, go back any one of those episodes or those editions, go down to where I do the conundrums and take the conundrum and ask it to think deeply about whatever your favorite conundrum is from the newsletter. And then put that in there and watch how it thinks through the process of playing both sides of a conundrum, the devil's advocate side, the pro, all of it. I think you're going to see pretty quickly. So there's 2 easy data sets that are free and available to anybody that wants to use it from our audience, but a transcript will get you there.
Mhm.
You know, you can use our transcript and go deeper on this for shadow AI or whatever we talked about that day.
Absolutely.
You're still not working, Andy, for some reason. I'm not sure. You went out, you came back in, it cut your audio for some reason. Yeah, he's
So-
like, that's it. Any other, I mean, we're kind of out of time. So any other last stories? Justin said, Brian, love the soapbox fan. Yeah, sorry. Some days, guys, some days you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Andy's
I
got
did not
amazing
mention-
stories.
I did not
though.
mention CrossFit or firefighting. I just want to point that out.
But you just did.
course, yeah.
So if you
All
have
3 for
those
the
on
bingo
your
card. All 3
if
for
you
the
have your
bingo
bingo
card.
card in front of you, go ahead.
Gareth said, who's good at lip reading? That would be awesome if we had somebody who could read Andy's lips and we're like, we think he's saying. That'd be great to just try to take a guess at what Andy's point is. He's smiling, so generally he agrees.
I believe he's saying he has not sold Nvidia, and is very happy to still own some pieces. No, yeah.
Yeah, Andy
there we
says
go.
yeah. Andy says yes to that. I love it. That's gonna be a whole show. Andy stays on mute, and we all just try to guess what big words Andy's using and how quickly we need to use ChatGPT to figure out what those words mean. Because that could be half of a show for me. It's like, oh man, he just used another one. All right, that's like, gotta go find out what he meant.
There was we still have the 12 days of OpenAI up. There was a crazy 12 days where our feed could not get the audio, and we did Mystery Science Theater 3000.
That's right. I forgot about that. Okay. All right. We're going to wrap things up. Thanks everybody for hanging out today and listening to all the different news. Yes, DeepSeek did take up a lot of the news cycle. So appropriately so, we talked about that a lot on the show, but there are always so many other things going out there. And Wednesday is one of my favorite shows to come back and have a discussion. We're going to be back obviously tomorrow and Friday. We do this every single weekday. If you didn't know that, if you just learned about us, obviously like and subscribe. If you want to follow along, you can come join us in the YouTube channel. And when we do these live every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern, so you can always be with all our other wonderful people in the chat, of which we have hundreds of comments each day, which is super, super cool. I don't know exactly what we have going on tomorrow, but Friday, I'll tell you, I have a cool use case for you guys. I'm going to show everybody how I created a clone AI assistant of myself that you can ask questions about any daily AI show. And then you'll get Brian, the AI clone, explain to you the deeper understanding and reasonings behind those topics. So it could be shadow AI. It could be any of the topics we've had in the last 2 or so weeks that I used as the training data. I will show you how I did it and the tools I used to do that. That'll be on Friday's show. So that'll be a fun one. And we'll have some fun with it. If you're live with us, you will probably even have an opportunity for a few minutes to play with it yourself before I shut it back down. So there you go. If you want to mess around with the clone that I built, it will be live for a few minutes, but you have to be with us live on Friday. So hopefully you can come back and join us then. All right, I know.
All right.
That's a good cliffhanger, right? All right, that's it for today, guys. Everybody have a great day. Thanks to Karl. He had to drop a little bit early. Andy, who can't say anything, but he's here. Brian, Brian, I just realized, Beth, you're listed as Brian.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's sure. Jyunmi, Beth, me, sure, all of us. We're happy you guys are here. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.